Welcome to the podcast, The Next Big Thing. I'm your host, Keith D. Terry, a consultant, a coach, and a serial entrepreneur. The mission here is to teach, inspire, and to motivate. Our guest today is Mr. James Brewer, founder and CEO of Envision Wealth Planning. We'll be talking about smart money moves to future-proof your business and personal finance. I've known this individual for some years, and he is an excellent guest, and I'm excited to talk to him. But before I do, like I always do on all my podcasts, is provide some background information and try to level set so that you are all prepared to follow our conversation. And so we're going to be talking a little bit about financial markets. And so I just wanted to bring up a couple of points that people may not know about the financial markets. Well, the first stock exchange was established in Amsterdam in 1602. Now, that's a long time ago, primarily to deal with the world's first security. And it was by the Dutch East India Company to deal with their to raise some money for them. Smart company. Then London followed in the late 17th century. And then in the 18th century, the Paris Stock Exchange came online. Now, having said all that, the point that there's 6 points I want to make, because in my research, I wanted to know what kind of changes have happened in the last 50 years. I'm old enough to remember some significant changes, and they seem to happen every year. But there's 6 areas that I want you to pay attention to. The first one is technological advancements. Computerization, financial modeling and analysis, automation have all changed and have been advances in the last 50 years. Computers have dramatically changed financial management. Tools like Excel have sophisticated financial modeling and allowed financial managers to perform complex calculations, simulations, and honestly, to be predictive. And of course, automation. And what I mean by automation is everything from payroll to compliance reporting have been automated to reduce human error and improve efficiency. The next area is regulatory changes. What's interesting here is following the scandals in the crisis, notably Enron and the scandal and the 2008 financial crisis, there have been a significant number of oversight and regulations and laws like Sarbanes-Oxley to help improve stricter accounting standards and greater transparency. And of course, compliance. Financial managers now have to spend a whole lot of time with regulations and have a deep understanding of both the legal and regulatory environments. The third area is globalization. Of course, cross-border finance, companies have to operate very differently. They have to worry about different scales, diversification of investments. Globalization has allowed companies to diversify their investments and revenue streams. The fourth area is corporate finance and strategy. The role of the CEO now is not just numbers. You do have some very strategic minded CFOs who will go to jail if there's some improprieties at a company. We've seen that come out of Enron. Risk management, financial managers now have to be a little more complex, and they have to be involved in instruments like derivatives and hedge funding to reduce the risk associated with their portfolio. Fifth, there's just 2 more: innovation in the financial markets. Of course, we've seen a whole host in the last 5 years. Financial companies have introduced a number of new financial instruments, including derivatives, structured products, more sophisticated insurance products, changing how companies manage their capital and manage risk. Not to mention some of the what they call fintech companies have introduced new ways of managing finance, such as peer-to-peer lending, crowdfunding, mobile payments, digital currencies, cryptocurrencies. There's so much innovation. And finally, sustainability and corporate responsibility. And as I like to call it, ESG, and maybe that's what they call it in the industry, there is an increased focus on environmental, social, and governance factors in financial management, where companies now have to incorporate sustainability into their financial strategies. So this is a setup for my conversation with Mr. James Brewer. So let me introduce him. Our guest today is Mr. James Brewer. As I said, he's the founder and CEO of Envision Wealth Planning. He is recognized for his innovative subscription-based financial planning model. James is a pioneer in integrating personal values with financial goals. He is dedicated to ethical investing and is an advocate for racial diversity in the financial markets and is using his unique voice in the industry. James, welcome to the show. As I like to call you, JB, how you doing?
I am doing great today. I have checked out a few podcasts and I've wondered if I could ever make it. And I finally have today, May 1st.
Yeah. Well, welcome to the show. So how are you doing? So tell the listeners, who is James Brewer? Where did you come from? You just don't pop up, right? So tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, I was raised in Gary, Indiana, with parents from Tennessee who experienced Jim Crow, Tennessee. So that's kind of interesting, and realizing now that actually my mother was born before Social Security was even started. So that'll give you a little history lesson, which is kind of interesting to realize. So when you talked about all the things that have happened over time. I was, fortunate to do well in school. So, moved on, did the, undergrad at what's called Kettering University. It was General Motors Institute at the time. I started my career in the car industry with Buick Motor Division. Later decided to start my own company to try to help car dealers do a better job of marketing. Eventually worked for Mercedes-Benz USA, went to MIT to get my master's degree. And then who knew that I would be combining my love of marketing and finance, which I did in my undergrad, into getting into this industry.
Okay.
But when I got into this industry, I had this strong drive that I wanted to help people invest in their values because that's actually what I wanted to do.
Well, before we get into that, I got a follow-up question on. So you were born and raised in Indiana, or
yes.
did you? Okay. I was born in Gary myself, so I have to give a shout out to the Indiana part of me.
Okay. Well, that's a small world that we didn't know until you had a podcast.
Right. Small, but I left when I was 8 years old, of course, and so continue with the conversation. So. When you went to undergrad, was your degree in finance or was it something else?
Well, I thought for a hot moment that I wanted to be a mechanical engineer, decided that wasn't going to be what I really wanted to do. So they had a degree called industrial administration. And I concentrated in both finance and marketing inside of that.
Okay. So you were a numbers guy. You were good with numbers. Okay. So tell us a little bit about the journey from the early years to when you started Envision Wealth Planning.
Well, I'll kind of start post my MIT time, which when I went there, at one point I thought that I wanted to get into the Wall Street kind of finance, but then just felt that the people that I was meeting, they weren't my kind of people, and I wanted to be around folks that I enjoyed. We didn't seem to have the same desire for helping people other than making a lot of money. Okay. So I had a couple of gigs along the way, and one day I just said, I really do think I want to do something in this finance field. But along the way, that my wife was working for a company, and we had a chance to talk to their advisor, and I said, well, I didn't want to invest in companies who wouldn't hire me. So kind of post my MIT time, I interviewed with a lot of jobs, and it seemed as though that the common denominator was that this was, pre-LinkedIn, so they didn't know what I was going to look like. And I just felt that race had something to do with it, and said I didn't want to go and invest in companies. So the guy said, hey, I'll help you do that, and give me a couple of weeks. So he came back in a couple of weeks and said, hey, here's a great portfolio. You'll make a lot of money, and then you can give the money to charity. And I stopped. I'm like, Did you just say that me not wanting to invest in companies who wouldn't hire me? I didn't say other people. I said me, and you were calling that charity. I'm like, wow, that's really deep. So,
So let me make sure I understand. So someone gave you uh, a, some money and said, create your own portfolio. Is that what I'm hearing?
well,
Wow.
we had the ability to invest her money inside of their retirement plan, and he was trying to do some other things, and we just said that's what we wanted to do.
Okay.
So that was our, let's call it, and along the journey to retirement, we said we just wanted to not invest in companies that wouldn't hire me or basically had bad DEI policies. That's what we're calling it now. That's what we were calling it then.
Okay.
So I kind of knew that there had to be a way, and did my own research, learned about some possibilities along the way. I decided that I was going to become a personal financial advisor myself after meeting somebody that I really appreciated what he was doing, and then decided that I would try to do this myself and actually ideally access a wider toolkit of investments that I could put people in who potentially wanted to do some of the same things that I wanted to do from an investing standpoint.
Okay. And so so it sounds like the journey was an interesting one. So Envision Wealth and Planning has been around how long now?
I actually founded it in 2018. I got in the industry in 2006. So,
okay.
So I decided the best way for me to provide all of the things that I wanted to do was to become what's called a registered investment advisory firm. I'm state of Illinois registered, and that has given me the toolkit that I wanted.
So let's talk a little bit about some, the title of this podcast is Smart Money Moves. So, what are some of the effective strategies that people can use to watch over their personal finances or business finances? What would you say about that?
Well, I'm just going to give a little quick plug and say that I write for Forbes. I'm a personal finance contributor. So if you go to Forbes.com and Google my name, you can find out more things. But one of the things I think for the most people is to learn how to best vet the advisor they're working with.
Okay.
So just a story that I stumbled upon. There was a guy, Jorge Posada, who used to be a catcher for the New York Yankees. I happened to read this article about him being taken by his financial advisor. I Googled the advisor, saw that it said that he was a certified financial planner, which I am one. And that's actually a much higher credential than just quote unquote financial advisor. And I went on a website, and it's called letsmakeaplan.org,
okay,
and discovered that he was never a certified financial planner.
Okay.
He just said that he was. So most people will just go, hey, the person works for XYZ firm, maybe judge them based upon, where that firm is located or whatever they're judging it on, the nice mahogany smell in the office, depending upon what kind of office, and not go and look deeper. So, I actually wrote an article on avoiding a predatory advisor. So more people need to go and learn who they're actually working with. And then once you start to do that, what's that?
I said, that's some good advice.
Thanks. And then once you do that, right, you'll have narrowed it down. Now interview those candidates that make the cut. If people email me later, we actually created a form to actually help people ask certain questions. We give you the links to all the different places where you might go and find the information. If they're an investment advisor, if they have any disclosures, if they're a insurance professional, et cetera. Like there's places to go. It's not common knowledge that those things exist.
You're right, because I wonder what percentage of people vet, as you would say, their financial planner. I think, for me, going to some of the big institutions makes sense. Merrill Lynch, when Merrill Lynch was doing its thing. Now folks, Bank of America, folks go. And I think people go to people that they know. But your point is be careful with whom you put your money with.
Yes. In fact, just because they're big doesn't mean that the individual advisor hasn't done something. There's a story of a guy that had, quote unquote, over $1 billion in management. He used to work for Merrill Lynch until one day they discovered that he had been doing some improper things. The next thing you know, he gets fired immediately. 2 weeks later, he shows up at another firm. So anyone who's popped into that other firm might have thought, oh, well, they work for, it was another big name firm. I'm going to try to, you can Google these stories. I'm not telling anything that's not just out there.
I think I've heard about this.
Okay. Yeah. And then, but he goes to this other firm. And I think it was about 4 to 6 weeks later that the regulators decided that they were going to terminate his registration, so he no longer could be in the industry. But so just because, right? So it was the big regulator who got him out. It wasn't that there was a firm. So I'm just saying, wouldn't it be nice to know? So there are disclosures that if you have something on your record, and you can actually just go read the disclosure. And often, if I don't have any, but if I did, you can respond to the disclosure, and that's a matter of public record as well.
I got you. Okay.
So I'm just letting people know that you should go vet and just don't assume because they work for XYZ company.
Okay, this is good information. Anything else? What else should they do? Anything else?
Well, then I think after you start working with advisor, just begin to talk about what you really want. So I think a lot of times people show up and they're like, oh, I feel bad because I don't have XYZ money or something about their past. And shouldn't I have more at this point in my life? And I was like, well, first of all, let's find out what it is that you actually want to accomplish. And a lot of people haven't stopped to think about it. Like maybe you don't need $5 million in an account to go live the life that you want to. Maybe you were, running hard, and you just don't want to run anymore, and you're willing to back off or take a lower role. So it's that kind of thing to actually start the conversation. And then as you're having that back and forth conversation with the advisor, you get a sense of how they think. Do they care? Yeah.
So let me ask this, because I thought that most people's financial goals would be the same: to make as much money as quickly as you possibly can. Now, it might change because of age. I certainly know that now that I'm older, my risk is not as risky as it was when I was 20 or 30. For those who are watching, I'm not 20 or 30, but so isn't it the same? And so what you're saying to me is it age related, risk related? Because I think most people want to make as much money as they possibly can, correct?
Well, some people say that, but many don't say that. So I'm going to give you my perspective to shorten it, because I could go down each one of those roads. So if you say, I want to live on, I don't know, pick a number, 100,000, 200,000, whatever number in your mind per year at a certain point in my life, then let's work backwards mathematically to figure out how do we make that possible? Or if that is possible, some people, they start with a number that's bigger than their current resources can even fund. I'm like, well, you'd have to save your entire paycheck to actually make that happen. But then we could say, well, depending upon how much you can save, then what rate of return would you need? So a lot of people sometimes come up with a more conservative tolerance, and tolerance is a loose word, I think, but they go like, I don't want to see my money go up and down. And I'm like, well, if you think about, 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, those type of accounts, if you try to access the money before age 59 and a half, they're actually going to take 10% in addition to whatever the tax is, right? Yeah. Yeah. So that's already telling you don't touch the money. So if you can't touch the money, then should you be that concerned about the up and down of the account value? What I want people to think is, you just told me, let's just use 100,000. You just told me you want to live on $100,000 after taxes in retirement. That's your real goal.
I see.
Your goal isn't, I don't want to see it to go up and down. Yes, I wish I could give you or anybody that the thing that is no risk that gets you a 20% return and it's a constant. That's not going to happen, period. So we need to think back about, what's realistic. And for most people, the issue is how much capital or how much can you save on a regular basis?
Yeah.
That is really, for most people, the biggest factor. It's not the factor of investment return. So as a certified financial planner, I help them along each one of those. We just don't say, give me your pot of money and let me try to make as much money for you as possible because, well, there's an argument that you didn't like a dip and that dip said, get me out, as opposed to, but if you had stuck with it. I have a portfolio that I'm just going to recall by mind that in 2000, if you started with $100,000, about 4 years later, it would have been down 40%. Most people would not have stuck. If they waited for the whole 20 years, they would have made more money than any other portfolio of mixture of stock and bond, but they would have had to been patient.
Okay.
But most people aren't really patient.
So let's talk about the impact technology. I mean, I get what you're saying. You're in essence saying people should hire you, work with a financial planner, because a financial planner can help put light and shed strategy on your long-term goal.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
So having said that, would you say that technology is chipping away at is it helping you or taking clients away?
I like computer-aided planning.
Ooh, please do tell me what that means.
Okay. So I actually have about 4 different technology platforms that I use in my work. So one of them is to help figure out all of these factors. So let's say that you want to do something in 10 years that costs $200,000, and you want to do something else that you'll need $100,000, and then you have a steady state of needing $50,000. Well, we can model all that for you, and the impact and whether or not you should save that in your retirement plan, or if you should save that out because of the tax implications. We can look at pre and post tax. There's just a host of different factors. So I kind of almost say sometimes it's a bit like, a story from my life. A guy was like, hey, I bought this Porsche, but I went to a racetrack. The guy was like 80 some years old, and he tossed the keys to the professional driver who was going to get in the car with him to show him how to drive it. And he says, I'm 80 some years old. There's no way I'm going to drive this the way that you can. So he tossed the keys and said, I want the exhilaration of how fast it can go. So I have a professional tool that, unless you have had all of the registrations that I've had and all the continuing education, you can't drive it the way that I can drive it, even if you were allowed to go buy it. So I'm just saying, so there's lots of different factors and things that I even have to know outside of what the software, because there's no perfect software that exists today that can do all of the things. And then one of the big things is, I like to say, individuals' behavior. So one of my favorite client stories is, I told this couple about long-term care. And I told the world that I had, I won a wrongful death lawsuit regarding nursing home care with my dad. So it's a very sensitive topic for me that I have been on the experience side of the loved one.
Okay.
So I told them about this, and they said, we don't want to do it for whatever reason. Then they were going to do it. They changed their mind. 9 months later, they finally decided they were going to do it. they said, thank you. There's no computer program that I know of that would have convinced them, that would have brought the care and the story of the why that I brought to their situation. And now that part is taken care of in their financial plan. So the rest of the stuff will be them enjoying life, because should that happen, we took care of that risk for them. And I feel that it was definitely a near and present danger.
Well, that's a great story. I wasn't suggesting that technology is removing you out of the picture or others like you, because I have some very dear friends that are financial planners, money managers. But I do know that technology, AI, is here, and it is going to play a larger role. I have a cousin who, was a big VP at a big company and retired. Now he manages his portfolio himself. And so, I like your story. I just wanted to know more about the technological component. So, my next question for you is, let's just take three categories of people. I want to take the young entrepreneur. What are some of the smart money moves you'd make for the young entrepreneur, the retiree, and a corporate person who he or she, the couple's making a decent amount of money? Are there strategic smart money moves that you recommend that each of those groups take? And let's just take the entrepreneur. It doesn't have to be young, but an entrepreneur. But they're not ready to sell their business. They're just making money.
Okay. Well, I would start with the entrepreneur, and I thought of someone that might be around their 30s for whatever reason. That's the young entrepreneur.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. And just say, all right, so what do you expect down the road? Most of the time, we're just trying to get the business going, but just give me a general idea of what you're thinking. So it could be, I'm going to have a big liquidity event and I'm going to sell the business, and whatever it is, just tell me. So for most people, we need building blocks. So ideally, they reach me before they've started the company and they're still working in a corporate environment, because then I tell them, likely you want to get some kind of disability income protection policy. So if something happens to you, that there will still be money flowing into you, because ideally.
Now that's a smart money move there.
Okay, that nothing's going to happen, because once you started the business, there's very few, if any, insurers who are going to want to give you a policy for some kind of unknown revenue. A few years later, likely you should get something that is for the company, and that would cover the gaps in the company. So now you've covered both yourself and that, because the biggest risk during our working years is usually disability, as opposed to it being I'm going to die. Yet, a lot of people think more about life insurance than they think about, what happens if I can't work, who's going to keep the business going.
Yeah.
And they're depending upon how they're funding it, it's just going to be some smart cash flow. I would try to get them to still put some money into a retirement plan, even if that's an IRA. I'm big on what's known as the solo 401k plan, which actually combines a 401k and a profit sharing plan. So you still get to save, let's say around $50,000 to $60,000, depending upon the revenue of the business, because, well, why not make sure that you've got something to lean on in case you don't get the big liquidity event.
Okay.
I'm thinking about the people in 2008, Keith, that suddenly the market is down and they're not able to get the dollar value of selling their business. So some of those people kept working, not because they wanted to, but because they couldn't sell it for the dollar amount that they wanted to. And we can never know when the market's going to be up and down. Well, I said, well, what if you could lean on $500,000 to $2 million worth of 401k or cash balance plan? That's another type of plan. Assets, then you wouldn't necessarily have to sell the business for quote unquote top dollar. And that just gave you another avenue for I can retire sooner and still live the lifestyle that I wanted to. So small amounts saved early grow larger than larger amounts later because of the time value of money.
Okay.
So that's how we're trying to convince them to start.
So let's move to the second group, retiree. The folks that are retired, do you handle their portfolio, suggest smart money moves for them differently?
Okay, so I'm going to say people between 60 and 70. So if you have not made your decision on claiming Social Security, great. We can have an even better conversation and see if we can't maximize what that is. A lot of people take it early because it's there, not because they necessarily needed the money. It's just the logic that they have. Well, I retired, so I take Social Security. Some of those people find out that that's going to get taxed a lot more than they realize because of when they took it. So we want to see if there's a way to maximize it. If they have some kind of pension plan, so I have some people in the government, so let's see how we can max that. One thing that I want to tell the world, glad you're giving me this opportunity, is today's retirement is not your grandparents' retirement if you're around 60.
No doubt.
Okay, my mom's 95. My dad made it to 83. Most of his people died in their 50s. But my mom had a brother and sister who both made it to over 90. The over under in my mom's family is nuts. We should all think that we're going to get to 100. We don't even know in the next 30 years what healthcare advances we're going to have that's going to have us live longer. If you go too conservative, early on, you hurt yourself with growth over time.
So when you say conservative, let's break that down, because do you mean bonds? So because I really want to get I want to get to the third group too. But explain conservative. Are you saying 100% equity is risky and 100% bonds is conservative? Is that the general approach?
Yes, I will say, and then there's percentages of each along the way. So like the middle is half and half, right?
Okay. So 60-year-old, 70-year-old people, of course, they're not their parents. Things have changed. So are you recommending a more riskier portfolio than our parents would have? What are you suggesting? I just want to make sure I'm being clear on that.
Okay. The fast answer is yes, because if you're living on the money and you need it to grow over time, because inflation's got to keep going.
Yeah, okay.
Inflation's got to keep going. And so in 30 years, we expect historically that prices are going to double.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Right? Okay. So if the price doubles from 60 to 90 and you're still around, like my mom is 95, I just try to put real people in it, right? So, and they did renew her driver's license at 90. Okay, so I'm just trying to give you this idea. So we just need to make sure that we're not running short. So a lot of people won't run out of money because of Social Security, but you will run short of money. So you don't want to really run short of money. So I'm not saying go to all stock. I'm just saying that some people used to think either I put it all in the bank or I put it all in bonds, and I don't see it go up and down. One other strategy that some people, depending upon how much capital you have, is you could put in a number of years in cash. Then you don't have to worry about the market going up and down. And then at least on the other end of your capital, you would leave it, in a much more aggressive, because it needs to grow and replenish. But that way, some people are more comfortable in saying, well, I got 3 years of cash here, so I'm not worried about, the ups and downs of the market. So when I see these ups and downs over here, and then you allow that money to replenish the other one.
Okay. And so the couple that's making six figures, they have no plans of retirement, but they're making a whole lot of money. Any smart money moves they should make?
At any point along your lifespan, you got to think at some point this journey won't keep going on. Right. So I'm just saying,
people aren't thinking like that now.
Well, if they're listening to the right podcast, then they're going to today. Okay. So because I work with people along a continuum. So you got a lot of people. I spent a lot of time paying off student loans, getting the kids out of the school, didn't do anything for myself, and now I'm in my 50s. Okay. Yeah. So it's now you still should start with hey, if I work to 60, 70, whatever the number is, with saving a certain amount of money, getting a certain rate of return, this is the capital that I'll have. And can I use 3-4% of that dollar amount for spending in the future? Some people really don't understand that you can't spend the whole thing. Most people think in easy numbers. Well, I'm going to live on 50 grand a year or whatever the number is, plus my Social Security, I'll be fine. Well, how do you get the 50 grand a year?
You bring up a really good point on that. And so, I just want to, keep this conversation going. At what point do you recommend that that people revisit their financial portfolio with you? Annually? Every 2 years?
Well, okay. My clients work with us usually on an ongoing basis. Some just want investments, but others take the full Monty and we give them financial planning. But Envision's, let's call it Envision's way, is we do 3 meetings. I'm going to start with the meeting that most people wouldn't expect. A lot of people leave money on the table with their employee benefits.
Do say more about that.
They don't fully understand their health care, their 401k, and life and short-term disability, long-term disability, and health savings accounts. I've had some people reject a health savings account because they heard high deductible healthcare plan. They didn't understand what it actually meant. We helped them figure that out. Now you take a couple, maybe one works for one company, one works for a different company. They have a different set of benefits. How do they figure out which benefits that they should be taking? So that's one of the things that we actually help people figure out during their season of open enrollment. So I've seen people miss that potentially thousands of dollars because they didn't understand that decision. Okay. So in another one, we talk to people about tax planning. We take their tax return, put it in our software, and it comes back and helps us see where there are tax opportunities that they didn't take. Very few people actually know their marginal tax rate, much less their effective tax rate. Or when they hear margin, some people think it's the tax rate for all the dollars that they get. So that's another area where we help people. So we're trying to help people get more cash flow, because that's really going to be the key factor of getting them more money down the road, more so than what their risk profile is. So ideally, we help people take the least amount of risk that helps them get to their goal. And not simply, well, what's your risk tolerance? And let's apply that to whatever your capital is.
Okay, that's good. And so what approach should people take towards their retirement? I think people should focus on their on retirement, but of course, 20s, 30s, 40s, they're not thinking about retirement just yet. They're thinking about savings. But is there a way you interact with the different age groups to get them to focus on the retirement? Because you did bring up a very good point. It depends on what your long-term goal is. And so when you're talking to your client base, how do you approach the topic of retirement?
Well, we just naturally include retirement as an expectation, right? That eventually you're going to want to work, but I'm finding an increasing amount of people just want to retire sooner. So they're telling me in their 50s, but yet they don't really understand, but that's kind of an emotional thing. And then we just try to bring in the reality. So if you really want to retire, then this is how much you have to save. Okay.
Which is shocking, right? Probably for a lot of people.
It is. But But we try to take like the dream down to an actual actionable goal. So which one are you willing to do? If we can get lucky, maybe we can get you some more return for the risk that you're going to take. But let's not think that that's going to fix it, right? So there's really whatever way I try to explain it to get them to realize, like, look, you got to save money. And you probably will have to pay off that college loan because you might think it's going to go away, but you've just been deferring it. And eventually the IRS will say, you've been given a gift of forgiveness, and not the kind that you thought, because the gift of forgiveness that the IRS likes is that 200 loan that it started out is now 400,000, and then they add it to your income in the year in which it's considered a gift. And now you have to pay taxes on that. So now instead of the loan servicer, now you got to pay the IRS. And they like to attach things like your paycheck, your Social Security, and any other liens to get their money.
Yeah, this is a very interesting conversation here because, people make a lot of money. Well, I won't make that assumption. I just know that as you get older, everything costs more. Bread costs more. Healthcare certainly costs more. Cars are ridiculously expensive now. And as people get ready to retire, they go on a fixed income, because they're making $200,000 a year, $50,000 a year. They can work overtime, but when you retire, you're trying to cap your expenses. And so, as you work with your folks, what would you say is the best approach moving forward? And this is where I would like to talk a little bit about the political financial environment. I don't want to necessarily talk about politics, but let's face it, politics makes it makes its way into the financial markets. Right now, interest rate is at the highest it's been in 23 years. So how should people make smart money moves to future-proof their business and finance? And I'm taking it back to the title of this podcast. So, take what you know in the marketplace, and then, give us some bullet points on what they should do given the environment. Somebody's going to win in November. Does it matter? Or does the Fed matter? I know I threw a lot of questions, but you can handle it, James.
Okay. I like to simplify certain things that I can. And the process is more complicated, but let's say the simplify. All right. So the biggest bill that we often don't talk about is taxes. So what I hate is when people look at their 401k or their IRA statement, it's never been taxed, and it gives you a false sense of security. So let's even say for the $1 million person, if they suddenly one day decide, I want to take all of that out of my 401k and put it in my bank accounts, you do it the wrong way, you immediately are going to have the whole thing taxed. So let's say you're going to see a reduction of around 40% of that money. So now you're down to $600,000.
Okay, I get that.
Okay, all right. So now let me give you a different scenario. Let's say you took all the money, you put it in your bank, and you still had $1 million. You probably like that. Well, that would mean in today's environment, you need a Roth. It needs to be Roth money. So relating it to your question, so right now, depending upon who wins the next election, we're either going to go back to the prior tax rates that we had, or we're going to keep the tax cuts that President Trump put into play. So we have two tax rates that, depending upon this election, we're going to affect some people and how much money they're going to have. Well, my mom is 95. She doesn't have any moves to go make. She's got to pay the taxes because that's just the nature of the beast right now. Mm-hmm. But if you could set it up from today that, I'm not going to be concerned about tax policy in the future because it's going to be zero for me. It's going to be zero for me. So And like when I go to the ATM that I go pull out money from my retirement accounts and I get a dollar for dollar, I really like that because that's what I'm used to when I go to the ATM for my checking account. But when you go to a withdrawal for your retirement accounts, they take out taxes. And depending upon what state you're in, they take out state taxes.
Gotcha.
So just a lot of people. So I really think that more people should have their eye on the prize of, as long as we have the Roth IRA and Roth features, it's called Roth features inside of a 401k, that you want to start to slide your money. In most cases, some high income earners may want to wait to go do this later, but you want to manage your taxes.
The Roth IRA is not going away.
It's not scheduled to. I'm just saying, okay, so when my mom was born, we didn't have 401ks. We didn't have Roth IRAs. So who knows what new things we may have, and who knows what. There have been a lot of people who've been concerned that Congress will want to eventually tax Roths. I'm just saying I have no idea, but it's a political climate. I'm just trying to answer your initial section that the Roth should stay. So while it stays in the way that it's around, I just think that more people, because of a big bill, the two largest bills to me that you have when in more advanced, as you're advancing in retirement, is an increasing healthcare bill and potentially increasing tax rates, depending upon how much money you have to pull out of those accounts to go pay for your healthcare.
Just a couple more questions. Given that, the baby boomer population is quickly approaching retirement age, and certainly leaving corporate America, would you, based on what you're seeing, say they're ready for retirement? Or do we have a problem that exists that people really aren't talking about?
There's a problem that we're not really talking about. So for some years, I've listened to people talk about, I feel healthy. I don't need to retire. That it sounds so good. Look at this person. They're still working. Well, the untold story for many people that I find out about, but I don't out anybody, is they don't have the money to retire. Right? So it's an assumption that they can retire in the comfort that they want to retire. So all you have is Social Security. So at least what I'll say is, public policy created Social Security. A lot of people, if there was no public policy, they would have likely have spent that money, right? If we said today,
I would echo that. Yeah.
Okay. So now they're at the point. So I'd still say, no matter what your age is, even if you're 60, you're like, man, I'm only 60, so it's done for me. Well, look, if you saved over the next 10 years, not saying that everybody could do this, but the law lets you save about $60,000. If you did that for 10 years, you got $600,000 by the time you're 70. But a lot of people, even when they start to see I don't have the accumulated value that I thought I would have, or realize how much that accumulated value will provide in spending, they still aren't adjusting. So that's why I said a lot of people need to work with someone so they can put the numbers in front of them to show them what's possible, or what they're headed into, or that they can potentially make adjustments in and save more money, or say, all right, I guess I'm just going to have to live,
okay.
lower.
James,
lower
we're almost at the end. So I have two final questions for you. Give me, what is the basic number that the average American should have to retire, or should they aim for in their portfolios? Said a different way. Same thing, but said a different way.
Okay.
5 million.
So average is hard. Average is hard.
You can handle it. You can handle it.
All right.
Come on.
So if you're a $50,000 a year earner, you're going to have a large percentage that comes back to you regarding Social Security. When you are 6-figure and above, then you need outside funds increasingly and potentially kind of exponentially to replace your money.
Now, you're being a little coy here. Isn't there a basic number that people should be striving for? Or are you saying, why the difference there?
Okay. Well, I'm going to add. I'm going to give you $1 million. Now, the recent research has started to suggest that on $1 million portfolio, a ton of assumptions in the background, that it will be sustainable at about a 3% withdrawal rate, means that $30,000 on $1 million.
Okay.
They used to think that it was $40,000 or it was a 4% withdrawal rate. But most people don't think in terms of withdrawal percentages. So if your market goes down, your $1 million suddenly takes a dip down to, let's make it 2008, down to 500,000, then you're living on a lot less. Most people don't want to do that. So that's why I'm just saying, when we find a target towards how you want to live, so if you want to continue to live on the pre-retirement income, that's just a specific calculation to you.
Well, I'm smiling over here because I have asked a couple of my friends that question, and I'll say this: $1 million portfolio is great to have. It certainly means that you're not broke, but at a 3% reduction, I think that people living on $30,000 a year is a tough thing to do in this country.
Plus Social Security. So I'm just saying it's a plus. So I'm not saying it's not. I'm just giving you numbers.
Well, which is why I think, we have to end it there. So, James, how do people reach you? Thank you for being on the show, but how do people reach you?
I thought you were going to talk about my new ESG Advisor of the Year through Investment News, and then you were just having me leave. Anyway.
Okay, let's talk about that for us a couple seconds.
Okay, well, I'm just happy to say that in the category of ESG, which stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance, there's an organization called Investment News, and I happen to be a finalist in that category, tying back to my story of saying that I didn't want to invest in companies that wouldn't hire me. But, I've taken that and advanced that a lot further than that original thing. So if people are interested in not only, getting the return rates and the risk rates, I like to do that while screening out for those things and show them that they don't have to give up returns in order to do so, which a lot of people think. So my company name is Envision Wealth Planning. If they want to email me directly, it's my initials, JB, at envisionwealth.us. They can read some of my things on Forbes.com, which, where I'm a personal finance contributor. I've actually written a chapter in a book on financial behavior that if you just Google financial behavior and my name, you'll probably find it. Oxford University Press was the publisher. I look forward to anyone who's a listener of this podcast or a friend of Keith Terry, because I think he's a great person, and I appreciate the diversity of the topics that you've had so far on the podcast. And
thank you
for having me today.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. There you have it. We have Mr. James Brewer, who is the founder and CEO of Envision. Thanks for listening to The Next Big Thing. I'm your host, Keith D. Terry. If you've enjoyed this episode and you'd like to support this podcast, please share it with others. Post about it on social media or leave a rating and a review. To catch all the latest from me, you can follow me on my YouTube channel at Keith D. Terry. If you want to recommend a guest, please email me at info@terryperformancegroup.com. This has been produced by your host and Jade Productions.